Well, here we are on October 4th, 1969, where all this family started and where our family history that once was a 8mm tape started. The day was sunny and warm. There's Grandma and Grandpa house, or for some of you, great Grandma and Grandpa house. Sister Carol. We're getting to Dick Hillstrom's car, who is my best man. And then to the wedding reception, which was held at a place called Sweden House, which was a buffet, a family favorite for both Cheryl's family and my family. Wedding parties there. There's Cheryl's mom, Sally. Most special person. We miss her dearly. This is coming out of the reception after eating, and we're heading over to our parents' house, who happen to live right next door to each other. I remember the day when I came home and the little girl next door had grown up, and we started going out, and it all led to this, to being married. And this is the beginning of our family video here. The Lord has blessed us so much with 5 wonderful children and 7 grandchildren and some spouses whom we all love, and we just feel real good about that. That was Dick Hillstrom's wife. He and I worked together at the state of Minnesota. Well, this was my car at the time. One of my favorites. Now we're at our houses. This is Cheryl's brothers, Butch, or Greg. Always seem to operate a little bit more unusual than other people. That's my sister-in-law, Linda, and of course Cheryl's mom. This is my parents' house. We laugh when we see the movies of this because we look kind of serious and chewing gum, and we say we look like Bonnie and Clyde because there was a movie about that couple who were outlaws. We're now on the train heading to New York for our honeymoon, New York and Cape Cod, following the Mississippi River down through Minnesota. I want to put a special thanks into our son Jeff, who's worked really hard on this project. We're trying to turn 8mm movies into tapes, which we have, and then from tapes into DVDs to restore all this and give copies to the children so that those that would like to have this over the years would be able to have it. The trains were actually about to strike the day before our wedding, and even the day before we weren't sure we were going to be able to take the train, and then a midnight presidential interruption caused the trains to roll, so we were able to take the train, and here we are now in Manhattan, the Holiday Inn. It was quite a ride from the train depot to the hotel by taxi. We felt like he should have been in the Indianapolis 500. The guy was just roaring through the streets and cussing at people. Some of the sights and sounds of Manhattan. The public transportation, as I remember, it was just phenomenal. Every street had buses and cabs, and you could just count on walking right out of a building into public transportation right away. One time we came out of a museum and our bus was down on the street, and we didn't even hurry to get to it because we knew by the time we got down there, the next one would be there and within a minute. This is the United Nations building. New York's an interesting place. For New Yorkers, there's New York and then the rest of the country. That's the two subdivisions. Madison Avenue was kind of a fun place to visit, where all the financial occurrences are going on each day. It was great to see the Statue of Liberty, hearing about all the history of that, and cost us 5 cents to get on the Staten Island Ferry, and we went across, and by the Statue of Liberty, it was kind of an inexpensive way to see it. And then we got right back on and rode back. The one thing we forgot to pack for our honeymoon was jackets, but the weather was so good the whole time, we didn't even need a coat. I had a sports coat. Until the night we got back to Minnesota was a cold snowstorm. There's lots of waving in this part of the movie. A little bit of kissing, too. I'd like to have visited where the immigrants came into the country, and my grandparents came through Castle Garden, we believe, not Ellis Island. It was before Ellis Island started, but there is some historic places you can visit there. But that would be the immigrants coming from Europe and other places. Their first sight coming into New York and the country is the Statue of Liberty. Liberty and freedom and the opportunity to work and make yourself something in the freedom of our country. The afternoon in Chinatown was quite interesting. You could see lots of things and you could smell lots of things. Also in New York, while we were there, was the garbage company was having a strike. So in various places, you found a lot of stuff out on the streets. It's one of the main streets in Chinatown. Central Park is an amazing place. It's right in the middle of Manhattan. You got commerce and retail and all kinds of business on this whole island, and then right in the middle is this huge park. We went there early in the morning, and probably a little too early, because some of the people that slept overnight on park benches were still there. It was a little scary, but we were there early in the morning. Some row houses. Saw a lot of those in Boston. That's where we are now. This is the Charles River, I think, in Boston, and there's a park there. Some historic buildings. Boston was an interesting place to visit too because of all the history there. We looked for the site of the Boston Tea Party, and all there was a plaque on the side of the building. Paul Revere was buried there. We were tipped off by someone to visit the graveyards in downtown Boston. And as you looked at some of the tombs, there were people you had read about in history books. So that was kind of amazing. Very old. From Boston, we drove up to Cape Cod, and this is at the beginning of Cape Cod. Beautiful place. That's why we like Door County so much on Lake Michigan, because it's a lot like Cape Cod. It's not commercial, it's more... Oh, I take that back. Yes, we are on Cape Cod. This is a replica of the Mayflower. So we're on our way out to the Cape. Replica of the Pilgrim's house. The Pilgrims, about half of them died that first winter they were there. But the second winter they had some harvest, and they started the holiday Thanksgiving, and they started it, this is Plymouth Rock, they started it as a continuation of the Feast of Tabernacles, the biblical feast that has to do with harvest. And that runs 7 or 8 days long. And the Pilgrims were a conservative religious people and knew well about the biblical feast days, and so it was important for them to continue those on. And especially the Feast of Tabernacles, which are now our modern day Thanksgiving. You see that we're in Hyannisport, which is home of the Kennedys. Now we're on one of the beaches on Cape Cod. That was one of the fun things there. We should have the song Cape Cod Bay being played right now. Quaint little villages on Cape Cod Bay. You're sure to fall in love with old Cape Cod. Lots of sandy beaches. It's the first ocean that Mom had ever seen. She didn't get to travel too much as a young person, although she's still pretty young here. Mostly her family would go to fishing resorts for their week of vacation in the summertime. I was young but had been to the Pacific Ocean a couple times as a child. My first time at the Atlantic. Well, we're home after the honeymoon, and it was a cold winter snow the night we got back, but being early in the season in October, it got to be sunny and warm again. And this is our house, a fourplex. That was our first home. We were on the lower right, and we lived there for about a year before we went back to college. We had one bedroom and a dining room and a kitchen and a living room. Here we are inside, opening wedding gifts. That's one of my favorite things Cheryl ever had, was that brown dress, brown jumper. I made this imitation fireplace. We had it a number of places, including the home we have now, but... Oh no, that was a different one. After returning from our honeymoon, we took a trip to my parents' cabin up on Lake Minnewawa. This building's no longer there. The people that bought it from them paid to have the cabin destroyed, although some old guy carried it away on a truck. There's a new cabin there now. This is my mom, Gloria House. Cabins were on small lots. They were only 50 feet wide, so your neighbors were real close up there. Lake Minnewawa was a great fishing lake. I spent all my summers from about second grade until high school when I had to work in the summers. But we spent most of our summers up there. There's Cheryl and my mom. The pontoon, my dad and three other guys, each four of them got together at the place they worked at and built their own pontoons. Their dog, Dusty. Kind of a temperamental dog. I think it was nice to a few people, but he liked biting other people if they were wrong. Brian maybe would remember that. Right after that was my 25th birthday, and Cheryl made me a cake the shape of a football. And then we were off to the Viking football game. That was my birthday treat, to go watch the Vikings and the Pittsburgh Steelers play football. That's the old Met Stadium. What you're looking at now is right where Mall of America sits. Joe Kapp was the quarterback there. The Vikings went to the Super Bowl this year. 1969, their first trip to the Super Bowl, I think. The cheerleaders for the Vikings in those years were the St. Louis Park dancing girls. So they were high school girls, they were conservatively dressed, and they were very cute and fun to watch, and a nice touch for the games. Went to some memorable games at this stadium, but it was very cold and very poor for watching football. It was built as a minor league baseball stadium and then later enlarged for when the Twins moved here from Washington, and then very next year the Vikings got an expansion football franchise. So they enlarged the baseball stadium. But you were far from the field. 31-14. Vikings went to 4 Super Bowls. They weren't able to win any of them. They were really at a handicap because they didn't have a lot of money for facilities, and by Super Bowl time it was very cold, so their practice facilities were almost non-existent. 52-14. Wasn't too many years after this that Pittsburgh became a power in the NFL and went up on to win quite a few Super Bowls. You see the snow on the sidelines. Back at Mom's house for dinner. Mom and Dad and Sister Carol and Cheryl and I. There's back with my cake. I wish I had all that nice black hair and that skinny body that I used to have. Christmas 1969, our first Christmas together. One of the contractors that was doing work for the state that I had some negotiations with had a bunch of baby black labs, and they wanted to get rid of them. So we took 2. I don't know why we didn't. They were so cute. We didn't really have a place for them, but brother and a sister. They were just adorable, and they got into a lot. We had them at Christmas time. Was our first tree. I wanted a nice big tree. There's our manger scene. made out of paper, homemade. We got a big Norway pine. My parents always got these little skinny, scrawny balsam or spruce trees that kind of look like Charlie Brown trees, so I wanted a nice big full tree. We had a Christmas gathering at our house. That's Dode, who was married to Cheryl's stepbrother Jerry, and Joe, and Jim, and Susie was Dode's daughter. Jim and John there are Don's sons, my parents. It was the first Christmas sing-along, which John has continued to this day, so we're 40 years later and we're still having Christmas sing-alongs, but it started at our house. There's Leonard and Sally, Cher's mom and stepfather, and Don and Kathy. Don and Fran, who were Jim and John's parents, and they divorced, and Don married Kathy, and Fran married somebody else that we don't ever see. And of course, Cheryl was so good at things. She's like sewed the clothes she's wearing, and did bakery, and all the stuff was all homemade stuff that we had. She's quite a skill for doing that kind of stuff. Those are puppies. Very nice family living next door there. That was the Brown family. No, I can't remember their last name. Had a 12-year-old girl named Shelley who was a very, very good, fun person to have next door. Now we're back up at the cabin. This is me, Larry, the water skier. And water skied a lot after my dad got the speedboat. No hands. Slalom. Slalom's kind of fun because you have such a big wake and you make such a big splash, but it's kind of hard going across the wake of the boat when you're on one ski. So we've left 1969 and we're into 1970 now. We're up at the cabin, so it's the following summer. And I'm going to be handing this narration off to Cheryl because we're going on our trip up the North Shore, as you can see. Gooseberry Falls. We stopped at the North Shore for years and years and years. Our vacation would be to the North Shore. One fun story was after we had Jeff and Brian and Melissa, and they had been to the North Shore many years, we were going to go out west and had a little extra money, but then we had a couple car repairs and we went out to eat supper with them, and they said, you know, we're not going to be able to take that trip. And but we will be able to go to the North Shore for a couple of days. And they all cheered, yippee, hooray, and they all talked about the places they wanted to go to, their favorite places, and we realized that was the place they wanted to go anyway. Split Rock Lighthouse was always a fun stop. Such a beautiful place right here in Minnesota. We've been to the Atlantic and to the Pacific and to the Gulf of Mexico, and the North Shore isn't second to any of them. Back to the cabin again. So we're going through the summer here. Mom's being kind of playful there. No, the cat had some kittens that was up there. This is most special here. This is my grandma, Bertha House, the orphan from Ireland. She's one of my most favorite people in my life. She was very special to me. She made me feel good about myself. And in those days, there wasn't a lot of that. But her and I were good friends. And these are cousin's children. That's a cousin's husband, Len. There's Cheryl behind Grandma's house. She's such a dear. She was orphaned in New York City and adopted off the orphan train, the legendary orphan train down in Iowa. A man and a wife had two or three boys, and they wanted a daughter. Well, the father wanted a daughter, and he picked my grandma. Took her for a walk from the train to the drugstore and bought her a doll. The wife wasn't as enthusiastic about having a girl as the husband was. Grandma couldn't hear at all in any of my memory. You can kind of see she's got hearing aids on, but they didn't work too well. She had a great spirit and wonderful smile, and she wrote me a lot when I was on active duty in the Army. It's my dad's sister, Gwen, and her husband should be there somewhere. Bill, there he is. Whoa. The light was very bright on this movie camera. Here's Cheryl's parents again. Cheryl's parents moved to Portland, Oregon soon after we were married, and that's one of the reasons we decided to get married instead of going. Cheryl was going to go to college, and I was going back to college. But so we went back together as a married couple. It turned out to be really good. We're having a little picnic up at Taylor's Falls at the Dells Park, one of our favorite spots. There's a tree there with our initials cut in.
Here we are on the campus of Winona State. This is Cheryl, and that is me. And Winona was a beautiful place, and this is 1970 when we both attended college there. We went to some football games and basketball games while we were there. I don't know if cheerleaders still look like that now. I think they do. Larry particularly liked going to these football games and the basketball games. It was very fun. Probably one of the best times of our lives was going to school there. We both were pursuing degrees in elementary education. There I am in the stands. Looks like we were ahead. I'm not sure if we won. It's the main building on campus. We took some classes there. Boy, the pants look a little different than they do nowadays. There's Joe and Linda. They came down to visit us while we were down there. We're on the kind of Oxbow Lake that's in Winona. Oh no, this is the river. That's looks like a barge of some sort. Some beautiful bluffs in Winona that look down over the valley area, and that's really beautiful. Our geology teacher told us you wouldn't want to live in the town of Winona because it was on a floodplain. And eventually it could have a flood. Oh my. Looks like we were having a lot of fun. We always have with Joe and Linda all through the years. Probably Highway 61 down there. There's Jerry. There's Dode and Susie and Lenore, Jim and John. Some other folks. Don, Fran. It's like Christmas again. While we were staying in Winona, we spent a lot of time on the holidays staying with either Jerry and Dode or Don and Fran. That's where we usually spent our holiday time. At that time, my parents were living in, I would guess it was Portland. We did spend a little time. There's Grandpa House and Carol and Grandma House. We did, of course, celebrate the holiday with them, but we didn't usually stay with them. Ooh, nice hat, huh? Looks good on me, too. There's Johnny and Dorothy and Rosie. This is Grandma House's and Virgie. This is Grandma House's siblings. And this is Joe and Linda's wedding. We've moved into a different season. This is Joe and Linda's wedding. This is the basement reception area. It was an important day for Joe and Linda, of course, because they got married, but it was also an important day for us because we had some really exciting news that day. We found out that we were expecting Jeff. So that was pretty exciting. And here I'm probably telling somebody that, but not telling everybody because I didn't want to spoil the day for Joe and Linda with, not that it would spoil, but kind of take away from the importance of that day. There's Jim and John. There's Fran. Butch over there. So now, of course, people know that we're pregnant. We're in Winona again. With Joe and Linda, they'd come down and visit us. We're swimming in that Lake Winona. And there's where Jeff is growing. Was a wonderful lake. It's we're just down there this past fall, and there's all kinds of beautiful paths around the lake, nice walking paths that didn't used to be there. Things always improve. That's a close-up. There's even a closer close-up. They took the train down to Winona, and so they were getting back on the train to head back up. I don't think it's something you can do anymore. Here we are with Grandma Nelson at Grandma and Grandpa House's cabin. Grandma's actually sewed this jacket that she's wearing. And I think she sewed it by hand. There's Grandpa Nelson. And Dusty the dog. This is, of course, at Lake Minnewawa up by Aiken, McGregor, in that area. Oh, it's our second anniversary. Must be October 4th. I'm looking more pregnant now. I remember sewing that jumper that I'm wearing. We're still in Winona. Still living in our apartment. This is our little apartment that we lived in with our 2 rooms. It's Christmas. Must be Christmas of 71. I'll look really pregnant now because it won't be too long and Jeff will be born. Of course, at Grandma and Grandpa houses with Carol. Wonder what's in fashion now for gifts. Looks like I have some slippers. And a cake pan. I remember this nativity scene. They always had it up on the hutch in their dining room. There's my brother Butch. There's Jerry and Fran and Dode and Kathy behind the present. She always hid. Susie, John, and Joe and Linda. And just being a little shy. More presents. I think Dawn there got that shirt from Grandma Nelson. She probably sewed it. There's Jerry. He looks like he's wrapped up as a present himself. Oh, and here's baby Jeff. We get our first look at baby Jeff. So it must be a little bit after January 10th when he was born. In the rocking chair that we bought. He's drinking his bottle. He's looking pretty cute. Oh, I loved being a mom, and it was fun to have Jeff. It was very exciting. That was our big decoration. There he is. He's pretty little. You know, I don't know exactly how old, but probably just about a month or so, I'd guess. He's looking at that light. Let me tell you, it's a bright light that would shine in order to take that picture. There he is with his daddy. He had a little bit of black hair. I sewed the little sleeper he's wearing before he was born. This is his baptism day, and he's with his godparents here, Don Raddick and Carol House. Not too happy. He was about 2 months when he was baptized. It's a tough day, though. So much to do. So many people, so many lights shining on you. There's Fran coming in, and Jim and John. John has the darker hair. Jim has the lighter hair. There's Grandpa House holding Jeff. And Grandma and Grandpa Nelson on either side, and there's Grandma House. They're trying to cuddle him and keep him happy. That can be a challenge with those little newborns. Looks like his lungs worked well. Ah, it's summer. We're taking a trip. There we are. We've got the Jolly Green Giant. We must be in that valley in Minnesota near Le Sueur.
This is the Valley of the Jolly Green Giant. And now we're in Mankato. We used to be, especially me, and now some of the kid like Dave even more, but we used to be a great Viking fan, so we'd go down, watch training camp, stay overnight, do some motel living, and then see some more training camp before we headed back up. This was probably one of the first years we did that, all the way till in the 90s with Dave and Beth and I would drive down for the day. The Vikings were a good team in the 70s. As I mentioned earlier, they'd gone to the Super Bowl 4 times. And I think this was the second year that they went. There's a big park in Mankato, and between practices we went and visited the park. Sibley Park. The cars look a little old to me. Bill Brown, number 30. They used to call him Boom Boom. Dave Osborne, 41. That was their two running backs. They weren't fast. They weren't big. They weren't too special, but they were durable, and they did what the coach wanted. Fran Tarkenton, of course, in the Hall of Fame, was our quarterback, and we traded him away to the Giants. Got him back and went to a couple Super Bowls with him. That 45 that went by was Ed Schruckman. Looked pretty strong and able right there, but some few years after this, right before training camp, he was on a motorcycle and had an accident and was paralyzed for the rest of his life. Looks like Wisconsin Dells. What you'll see on a lot of our movies are vacations and Christmas. That seemed a bit like the times we thought about taking out the movie camera. It's a beautiful spot in God's beautiful world. Some of the swallows that were living on the underside of the rocks, and that's the town of Wisconsin Dells. There as the boat's pulling back in. One of the things we seem to get in our movies is the wave action. This is actually Lake Michigan. One of our favorite spots we've been to, I think 6 times, is Door County, which is a resemblance of Cape Cod. Quaint, a lot of open space. And at the foot of Door County is Green Bay, where the home of the Green Bay Packers and Lambeau Field. We discovered that kind of just driving through Wisconsin and stayed in Green Bay at Midway Motor Lodge, and it made that a regular stop. There's baby Jeff on his first vacation. Jeff was born in the middle of the winter on one of those very, very cold snaps. So must be summertime with vacations and him looking like he's growing into a older baby. Jeff was actually born in Winona. Well, I was born in Minneapolis, but we were living in Winona because we were going to college there, and I finished my 4-year degree, BS at Winona State College with honors, and Cheryl had about 2 years worth, and we were thinking about continuing school. She was going to finish and get 4, and I was going to do my master's degree in counseling. But with the new little baby, we felt like, maybe we should make some money. So I graduated and started looking for and received a teaching position in Mounds View. This is my uncle George and my aunt Mildred's 50th wedding. Mildred is my dad's sister. There were 9 children in his family. Mildred and my dad stayed in Minnesota. The other 7 and my grandma and grandpa headed out to California. My grandfather host died in July, and I was born the following November. My mom went from California back to Minnesota to be with her mom for my birth. A lot of these are cousins. The young ones dancing there are cousins' children. There's my Aunt Mildred and Uncle George. My Aunt Virginia and Uncle Johnny in the back. Of course, my mom and dad in the foreground. There's Cheryl. And again, Grandma on another visit. She lived in California, but she'd come and stay for 2 or 3 months. So it was so nice to have her. One of my best memories of her is when she'd come. Here's Jeff playing a piano that we now have in our basement at our house. She'd come in. She knew I liked chocolate pie, and my mother never made chocolate pie, or let alone anything just for me. But Grandma would make chocolate pie, and nobody else could have it except for me. So I'd have a whole pie to myself when she'd come. Jeff was the only one of our children for my grandma to see in person. She lived to be 93, and as a young family and with kids growing up, we didn't really have the funds to get out to California to see her, and she got too old to come back to Minnesota, and before we could get out to see her, she passed away. She had a lot of heritage with 9 children, and I don't know how many children, grandchildren, and great-grandchildren. But she was well loved. Her door was always open. She was a very hospitable person, very friendly. Couldn't hear. Always had white hair that I can remember. There's Jeff doing some crawling. You can see that he's aging here. The old piano wasn't in too good a shape, but we spent some money and had it tuned and the ivories fixed, and after they brought it over to our house. They told us to sell the piano with the house because it was never going to get back up through the basement. Besides being so heavy that it'd take the top off to get it in. The first person that we had give us an estimate on the piano said he'd give us $50 for it. It wasn't worth anything. It was too old. The next guy came in and said, what a treasure that this very piano is still registered. Showed us the number, said they don't make them like this anymore, and just loved working on it to get the sound quality back. Noticed another Norway pine, big and thick. We wanted big trees in those days. Jeff's almost a year old here now. This is our house in New Brighton. We had a little house with 2 little bedrooms, a living room, and a kitchen that barely had enough space to eat in. Luckily, we had a finished basement, and that's where we entertained people on our ping pong table. So this is Christmas, Jeff's first Christmas. Almost done with the year 1972. I started teaching at Island Lake Elementary School and was so happy. I actually signed a contract months before I ever finished college. The school district I was student teaching with right in Winona, where the college was, offered me a job for the following year. So we took a week off and went and interviewed or looked for interviews in the Twin Cities, and I had like 3 or 4 interviews in the first couple of days, and they called me up and said, you can have your choice of jobs, that all of the principals that I interviewed with wanted me, so I felt very fortunate. The district hired 19 teachers that year, the Mountain View district, and they had over 3,000 applications, so it wasn't an easy task getting a job. And here we have another gathering. This looks like Jeff's birthday. Could this be your birthday? We had several snowstorms on his birthday. One time we had trouble getting people there, and it was lots of snow and wind and cold. Oh, he got his own little piano. He plays it just like he did the big one. Jeff's first few weeks, he was kind of colicky, so we had to take him for rides and stuff. But after that, he just was such an easy baby and a good baby to have. I remember the feeling when we got into the car to leave the hospital, head home to Winona, and I looked and Jeff was sitting in the car seat and Cheryl on each side, and I thought, now we are a family. That was the first sense I had of that. Here's our house. It was pink. We painted it blue. We had a big blue spruce and a clump of birch in the front. That's Leonard's, Grandpa Nelson's car. The guy with all the hair is me. It was kind of fun taking care of a house. Here comes Linda and Sally. Still wearing warmer jackets. There's Joe.
This is the back of our house, of course. This is Cheryl again. This is our house in New Brighton. There's Joe being silly. This is the little fireplace that Larry built for our apartment that we now have down in the basement of that little house. And there's Jeff checking out his stocking. It's Christmas 1973. And he's just about 2. Looks like he likes his little construction hat, his M&Ms. Things were pretty tight. We didn't have a lot of big budget, let me tell you. But he's happy. Those PJs I made for Larry. He looks good with the hat. Really good. There they are, the 2 guys opening up their gifts. I wonder what they got. You know how they are at almost 2. Oh, this was from Grandma Nelson. No idea what the money is. She always made little stocking hats. And she'd always find little tin cups and saucers. She always thought that was important. I believe my mom made this shirt for Larry. She used to make custom tailored shirts when I was a kid growing up. There's our tree. In those years, we always got the long needles. I was never real fond of the long needles, but it took us quite a number of years, you'll see, until we actually got away from that sort of thing. There's the front of our house. I'm trying to remember what avenue it was on. 2nd Avenue Southeast, I believe. We had some real pretty trees in the front, a birch and a beautiful pine tree. Some nice shrubs. Looks like a nice snowy day. Couldn't exactly see the numbers on the house. I think it was 218, but we're really getting a good look at the trees here. All right. Looks like we're still celebrating. I remember making that shirt that Jess got on. Look at that nice wave. Look, good smile. There we go. Grandma and Grandpa house. Oh, this must be Jeff's birthday. He must be 2. Looks like he's got a truck there. I think he likes this a little better than that money he got at Christmas. Doesn't he have nice hair? Nice and shiny. Oh, we got a coat. Oh my goodness, I think the seasons have changed. It's summer. And we must be on a vacation here. I'm trying to think, where are we? It's an interesting job narrating these. You don't know what you're going to see next. I believe we're in Green Bay, Wisconsin. Maybe headed to Door County. It's an awesome place in Wisconsin to visit. And of course, we got to see it before it got so busy with people. Took me a moment to quite tell what I'm looking at here. It looks like some sort of an incline. It's like bad weather. Ah, I think we're taking a little ride. There's Jeff and myself taking a ride at the little amusement park. Good old Lake Superior. These were the sort of things that we'd play backwards for the kids that they'd always enjoy, watching the train go backwards. Oh, the helicopter ride looks like fun too. Must be me taking this movie. Not the easiest thing with something moving so fast. Here's Jeff in the backyard in his little swimming pool. There's his boat. He loved that boat. His first sentence had to do with boats. The boat fell over, I think was his first sentence. The boat tipped over was his first sentence. Here he is in the back riding his little bike. Ook. Oh, at least he didn't hit too hard. There was a nice little incline in the back. Well, this was somebody we must have done daycare for. It's eluding me who they are. I often did daycare with at least one family at a time. So the kids would have little extra playmates and we'd have a little extra money. Well, now we're back in Winona. There it is, the McVeigh Ice Cream Shop. We thought we'd have ice cream on this vacation. Jeff and I sitting there. We must have driven down to Winona, have a little visit. On campus, looking and see what changes there were. Look at Jeff's hair, isn't it beautiful? We're trying to get Jeff the idea that someday he'll go to college too. There have been a lot of changes. There's a lot more students down in Winona than there used to be when we attended, by far. You wonder what Jeff thinks we're doing there. I don't know what the vehicles look like to people looking at this. There's where we lived. We lived in a little part of that, 2 rooms upstairs. It was a pretty small little place. I remember we paid $90 a month for the rent, and that included really everything because we didn't even have a phone while we lived there until Jeff was born. Downtown Winona. I think sometimes we thought it would have been nice to have lived in Winona, and Larry could have gotten a teaching job there. And there's a statue of Winona that's no longer there in Winona, we've come to discover. There's Sugarloaf. And this is that kind of oxbow Lake Winona that's there, and it's got just beautiful paths, as I mentioned before, all around it now. And many picnics along this lake.
Here we are back at Mankato again. In those years, it was one of our regular vacation trips. The nice thing about training camp, there's Bud Grant, Hall of Fame, great player, great coach, University of Minnesota, and Vikings, and up in Canada, and Philadelphia Eagles, and different places. But at training camp, you get real close to the players. You can even hear them talking. There's Carl Eller, 81. He used to come in the grocery store I worked at in college, and we talked. And number 10 is Fran Tarkenton, Hall of Fame quarterback. A little bit of a close-up there. '44 is Chuck Foreman. He was an all-pro type running back. A lot of these guys played in the Super Bowl that are walking by. Jim Marshall. Brian was born on April 1st, April Fool's Day. The night before, I kept hoping he was going to come before midnight so I wouldn't have April 1st as his birthday, but he waited till morning. That was a rocking chair I bought and painted, and we had it for a lot of the kids. Brian was primarily bottle fed. Most of the other kids were breastfed and then later changed to bottle fed after some months. Water looks cold. There was our garden behind the garage. The house is still pink. We'll be painting it blue one of these times coming up. The kids spent a lot of time on this swing set. Holding their head up, of course, is one of the big changes for babies. This is at the YMCA just north of our house. We spent a lot of time there, and they had a kids parade. And we should see Jeff here along sometime. Here he comes. His horse. Another common feature of our family movies is waves. These would be on Lake Michigan at Door County. Beautiful setting, beautiful little peninsula with a number of small, quaint towns. They've protected it and kept it from big box stores and fast food restaurants and sandy beaches and artists and lighthouses and quiet places to hike. There was a place called the Sunshine Cafe. We used to have breakfast because they had an outdoor part. And we'd walk there from our place we stayed at and have breakfast in the outdoors. And that started us in liking to eat breakfast outside. Over the years, we had a lot of breakfast in our own patio at home because of enjoying our breakfast at Door County in the morning. Kids love to be along the lakeshore with rocks and things to do. You would never do this today, but Mom and I and Jeff went up the beach and Brian was sleeping in the car, so we locked it up and just went to the beach for a short time and came back, and he was just screaming. This is called L. Johnson's. It's a Scandinavian restaurant and buildings, and they have a sod roof, and as you saw, there's goats on the sod roof to keep the sod down. Here's Jeff and I swimming. You can see the waves sometimes just knock them right over. All my years of teaching and being around kids with strep throat, I only had it twice in my life, and once was right after this vacation. This is right before school started, and I got it a couple times consecutively and couldn't get rid of it and had to go to a throat specialist. And the second time I got it was just this last year. I was probably checked for it 25 times and without ever having it. There's Grandma Nelson and Don's wife Fran, Jim and John's mom. There's Joe. I think that's Janet. There's Jim and John. They were regular visitors at our house. We'd have them for overnights or different things. Jeff with his aunt and Brian's grown up a little bit. Now it's Christmas. He spent hours and hours and hours on this horse over some years. He just loved it. You'll probably see it again. We're still sticking with the big Norway pine Christmas trees. Sister Carol and Dad. You could tell that Brian liked his Christmas present, because he bounced on that quite often. A lot of times with sideways baseball hats on. That was one of his trademarks there. Cheryl oftentimes had the boys with similar clothes. A lot of times she made them. And then when the girls were growing up, they had similar clothes out also. Some of that was done for Minnesota Fabrics. They actually did modeling at one point coming up, but that's some years from where we are now. You can tell that Cheryl made the pajamas that Jeff and I are wearing. Father and son pajamas, you don't see that too often. Unless you got a sewer in your family. As I remembered, Brian was a pretty early walker and talker. He was a busy guy. Well, we've changed our carpeting and our drapery in this house now. Must be around Halloween time. Ooh, who's this scary monster? Oh, it's Jeff. No monster. Those are fun days. The kids were little. I used to watch cartoons with them on Saturday morning, and we'd have pillow fights. Sometimes I'd just lay on the couch from a tired week. Oh, now here comes baby Melissa. Family's growing. Living in a small two-bedroom house. Brian was always kind of curious about Melissa, and one of those little guys you had to kind of watch when he was by the baby. Melissa was born in November. Melissa and Brian are close in age. The movie camera has such a bright light, I felt bad taking pictures of babies because it seemed to bother their eyes so much. We're still into the Norway pines for Christmas. That hasn't changed since we've been married here, at least up till this year. So we're in November of '76 when Melissa came home from the hospital. She was born on a presidential election day, and Sarah was ready to have her, and the doctor wasn't there, and the doctor wasn't there, and they kept saying, "Wait, wait, hold it, hold it." And we found out he was standing in line waiting to vote. And that probably wasn't too good because she was ready to be born. But the president was Jimmy Carter that was elected that day. Nice Christian man. That's a black walnut tree we had in the backyard there. Very special kind of tree. These little pine trees you're seeing along here were given to us. Well, there's one there. One behind the garage by my principal. They're now way taller than the house. One of the fun things we used to do when we'd show movies from our movie projector on this one would be to run them backwards so the sled was pulling the other person. Well, here we are in springtime, and Jeff is trying out his two-wheeler. We had a nice, long driveway, which was great, other than crashing into the garage, which was great for bike riding, but it was really not great for shoveling snow. I remember, yeah, Brian had a lot of blonde hair. So Melissa's still a baby here. Next door lived a retired couple on the other side of that fence there. Oh, there's Melissa. So our situation was now we had 2 bedrooms and 3 children. Melissa, as a baby, stayed in a bassinet and then a crib in our bedroom. But about this time, oops, over she goes. About this time, we figured out we better find a bigger house. So we started looking. And it looked for some months, and we're getting kind of tired of looking and just about to give up when we found the house that we bought and are still in. That was purchased in 1977. Vacationing at Paul Bunyan Land. Brian with his hat again. And Jeff riding around on the cars. I don't know if it shows on the movie net. One of these deers, I think, tried to grab one of the boys' hats to chew on it. off to the boat rides. It was really nice having two boys because all the time growing up they played together a lot and were fun to have. But then after having two boys, having a little girl was so special. It was very soft and cuddly and fun to have it as a girl. I always hope for families to have some of each. So Melissa's learning to crawl here. They never did these things on their own. We always spent time with them. Enticing her with a bottle. They were lucky that their mom put a priority on them, and she was home with them. She was a very intelligent person, and could have finished college and been off in her career, but she thought it was too important to be home with the children, so she interrupted her college career by about 21 years and spent lots of time with kids. And I tried to help that by supporting her decision and also by doing extra work. I coached a lot of the school sports teams and worked on paid committees and did summer camps, roofed some houses, made some money in lots of those ways that usually paid for vacations or a new piece of furniture or something like that. We are in the house on Edgewater in Shoreview now. That was the carpeting that it had when we moved in. So now baby Melissa has her own room. We have 3 bedrooms upstairs and 2 bedrooms downstairs, and 2 boys are sharing one in the bigger bedroom upstairs, and Melissa has her own nursery. And we have a bedroom, which has a master bathroom, I've been thankful for that for over 30 years now. It's so nice to have a master bathroom. And that's our original furniture we bought actually just before we were married. It was in our first house. Orange. And Melissa's getting those muscles worked on. I'm pretty sure this was a Sunday morning and just her and I were home. Oh, now we're off to another day. Some of those toys we had were around for a really long time. Matter of fact, we have 4 or 5 boxes of toys from the kids that we put away for some years, and now they're circulated for grandchildren. Sometimes they're out, and sometimes they're not. Oh, here comes a couple of monsters that have been out trick-or-treating. I wonder who they are. Oh, here's Melissa's first steps. It was a little hard on this carpet, It was kind of a shag carpet. A little bumpy. Well, there's my briefcase. The secretary at our district office has told me this many, many years after I walked in to apply in the school district. And I walked in with a suit and a briefcase, and she said, the ladies in the office always remembered me as the person who walked in because I looked so professional. I got that briefcase from Cheryl's half-brother Jerry and used it for many years. Looks like a birthday party, sometime between Halloween and the next Christmas. She always liked swinging and bouncing, it looks like. She's walking pretty good now. Jeff and Brian are sitting so nice and patient. Well, so Melissa can be the star of the show. Kids in these days were more quiet and more patient. I don't know what the difference is. Maybe they were eating healthier food, and maybe it was that their dad wouldn't let them be anything else. Now here we are at another Christmas. Still with the big Norway pine. Sit and spin, that was a thing the kids played with a lot. See what the unwrapping. Melissa's first dolly at 1 year old. And notice how she grabs it and hugs it just like a mom. Sometimes upside down. But she got it right, and then she put it in the... there's a Jeff. I think Brian had a matching one too, with snowmobile suits or winter suits to keep him warm. There's a lot of some biblical passages about being a good wife. That's a nightshirt and a robe that Cheryl made for me. She also made the robe that she's wearing. But she's some mom. She really knew how to take care of us. Well, that was the walkie-talkie, or besides. The manger scene that was there is made out of dough that Janet made for us. Made the dough and painted it, and for many, many, many years, that was our manger scene. Auntie Virgie, my mom's sister and my aunt, she was just so special. She was... When she didn't go anywhere else, she'd come to our house, and we'd take her out to eat a lot of times. She especially liked Ponderosa, which was a buffet with steaks. Looks like a T-ball game. 1, 2, 3, swing. Oh, not yet. Whoa! Try it again. 1, 2, 3. Whoa, look at that ball go. He's running to first. Now he's running to second. Lost his helmet. Slide, slide. Nope, he didn't have to. Really felt like a family when Jeff was born, and we went from 2 to 3, and now that we have 5, that is a special number. It's a nice group. You see the 3 kids there, we really felt like a family. IDS Tower. Yeah. This was, I think, for the Aquatennial. We went and sat on the, this is Lake Calhoun. We went and sat on the beach and watched the race boats. If you look at that same scene now, you see about maybe 8 buildings instead of 1 looking in that direction of downtown. This is looking from the southwest towards the northeast on the lake. It was very noisy, the boats. Most of the places we went as a family, whether it was the Aquatennial or the park by the waterfalls. That's our 76 Buick that we bought brand new in 1976 for $4,000 and some dollars. Right off the, we ordered it actually, so we picked out all the parts. This is the grotto. We took a little driving trip. And this is in Iowa. A priest built this. We're moving the camera a little too fast. But he built it with stone and mortar as a kind of a mission place. And being kind of nominal Catholics most of our life, just before this time, we took a special class from Father Tony, who had gone off to a little full gospel church and got himself saved, started teaching the class that we took. And the night before in the motel, I did something I didn't normally do. I read out of the Bible. And I read one of my favorite parts on the Sermon on the Mount, the Beatitudes. And as we pulled up to that place that the priest had built and walked to it, the Beatitudes were in the wall of the church. It was kind of like a sign. Little brown church there. And this is cliffs overlooking the Mississippi River as it divides Iowa from, I think that's Illinois on the other side. It was a fun vacation. I remember it well. It was the first one where we used our plan of staying in Holiday Inn Expresses and then determining which one was the next one we would stay at, and they'd set up our reservations ahead of time for us, and then we'd get there, and if it was early in the day, we said, where's the next one? And we'd take off and drive to another one, and if it was later in the day, we'd stay overnight. It's kind of a cool place in Iowa. Look down along the Mississippi River. Almost saw that sign. Oh, I remember this. I don't like heights. We'll take this elevator up the side of the cliff. There we go, having a picnic. There's our little girl with her bonnet on. I know that we went from the Iowa side over to the Illinois side, and we went to a town called Galena, which has a lot of historical kinds of significance, including former presidents' residence and some things. Fall trees. The Iowa trip was in the summer, so this is later on that year. It looks like we're off exploring at a park somewhere. Or a lake. Oh, I know where this is. This is Lake of the Dells in Wisconsin. One of our favorite places to go picnic or hike. And who was to know at this time but we'd buy a cabin within about 7 miles of this place. But we're off hiking around at Lake of the Dells, just across the river from Taylor's Falls. One of these trees has our initials in it. In Interstate Park on the St. Croix. I had a mustache for a while. I remember the day I shaved it off. I was in the master bedroom bathroom, and Melissa walked in and saw me without a mustache, and she said, "Who are you, and where's my daddy?" Those are kids that lived down the block, the Chapins. Brett and Bridget. Brett got juvenile diabetes not too long after this. And they moved away. The house they lived in we actually had looked at, but it didn't have the openness, and it had a detached garage, and then someone clued us in this one was going to be for sale just a few houses away. We liked the attached garage and the openness of the living area. Melissa was very good at taking care of her dollies. Even Brian helped with his superhero costume on there. This is our fake fireplace, and down in the basement it was actually a small closet, and there was storage behind there. But I turned it into a fireplace. And here comes the kids on Christmas morning to open their socks. The fireplace is gone now. It's actually inside. Part of it would be inside a closet. Jeff is being helpful. Get his sister her stocking. It was so fun to have Jeff at Christmas time because it was fun and tiring, but he would wake up about 3 o'clock in the morning and come and stand next to our bed and ask if it was time to get up yet, and we'd tell him no, and he'd go back to bed, and then he'd come back later, but usually once you got to about 6 o'clock, that was about as long as he could wait, and that was a good time to be up. Sorry to say we switched to an artificial tree at this point. And we did for a few years. Most of our movies are Christmases and vacations. Seem to be a pattern. There were two special times when families together. Happy times. See a Viking shirt there. A new book. One of the larger mistakes we made at Christmas was to buy Brian a drum. I'm just kidding. He played that thing and played that thing. But he became a drummer in the band. So that was a good thing, I guess. He liked it. He liked to bang on the drums. What do we got in our box? Uh-huh. A television set. The castle there we still have to this day. Like grandkids play with when they come to our house. There's the bread dough manger scene. Later on, family comes to the house for Christmas. That oh, Aunt Virgie. We loved her dearly. I miss her a lot. She's gonna fix herself up. Grandma and Grandpa House and Auntie Carol. Oh, Capsula. That was a fun toy. It suited Jeff really well because he was so good at putting things together. That's Joe and Linda.